We are going to continue with our media availabilities here at Bristol Motor Speedway for the 25th anniversary of the Food City 500. We are joined by Trevor Bayne, who is a native of Knoxville and the driver of the number 6 AdvoCare Ford. Welcome home, Trevor. I'm sure it's pretty special to get to race here at Bristol, and you're bringing a pretty solid start to the 2017 season back home here. So what does it mean to be able to race here at Bristol?
Yeah, well, as you guys know, this is the place that made me a NASCAR fan and made me want to do what I do. So it's obviously a special place for me. Love racing here. And even if I wasn't from Knoxville, I would love this racetrack. It's just really fun, and we've been successful here. So that always makes it more fun when you're fast and can run well. I think the last 3 races we've had top 15s and a top 5 in this race last year. So with the performance gains we've made so far this season, I'm really looking forward to getting on the track and seeing if those gains relate to Bristol as well.
We will open up to questions for Trevor. Please raise your hand. We'll get a wireless mic to you. We'll start here with Jeff.
Jeff Gluck from jeffgluck.com. Trevor, I'm kind of wondering about the VHT with the on and off rain that's expected throughout the weekend. How do you know how much you'll be able to trust it when you get in race conditions?
Yeah, when I got here today and walked down the racetrack and saw how black it was, I was almost concerned it's too rubbered up. You know, sometimes at these racetracks, when rubber gets down throughout the weekend, the track slows down. So it's pretty excessive. I don't know. I'm excited to get on the racetrack and see. Obviously, the only thing I've seen so far are the K&N cars, and they're using it. You know, if I look at last year's race, I feel like it was a big benefit for the first 15 laps of a run. But as your tires fell off and you couldn't go to the gas as hard as you wanted to on exit, you moved up and tried to get the runs on exit just like you would a mile and a half. If that is the case, if it's useful for that again, I would be totally pumped and content about that, but we won't know till we get out there. And like you said, with the rain, you think about road course races. When moisture gets in the air, you kind of run offline a little bit. You don't want to be on the rubber. So I don't know how the chemical reacts to water, but I know how rubber reacts, and there's a lot of rubber down there. So I'm looking forward to practice to kind of feel that out. I do know, you know, last year in practice, it was really fast, and everybody practiced down there, and then you got to the race and you wish you had worked on your car on the top a little bit more. So for us, again, I think I'll probably run down on it if it's fast for 15 laps or so. But even if our lap times aren't as quick, I still have to force myself to run the middle, run the top, work on my car where we know we're going to race at.
We'll go to Jim, right next to Jeff.
JimOutterMotorsport.com. We were talking to Ricky last week, and we were talking about how the last couple seasons you guys have been hopeful because you started off better, but then it didn't sustain through the whole season. He seemed to think that this year you guys had turned that corner and that it might be able to sustain. Do you feel the same way about your team?
Well, I think it's different this year. Last year we saw some success, but it was inconsistent. You know, one weekend I might be fast, the next maybe Greg or maybe Ricky, but we weren't always consistent. We couldn't run door to door every race. It was kind of like one of us got lucky and hit a lucky setup and had a decent car build, and we went and we ran well. But if I look at last weekend at Texas, what happened in practice when I crashed the primary last year and in years past, I would have thought, well, we're done. You know, the backup's going to be terrible. We just got lucky and the primary was fast. But we're actually building fast race cars now. They're building them with that intention, and it actually works. You know, every car has been fast. Ricky and I have finished door to door almost every weekend, so we're able to consistently do that, and I think that's what makes us hopeful. It's not like we went to California and Texas with low grip and said, okay, we were pretty fast there, now we're going to have this false hope that we're going to be good everywhere. I think, you know, Martinsville was a huge gain for us, that we were both able to run in the top 10 at parts of the race. We've been terrible there in the past, so to see us on a flat racetrack have speed, and I think the other part of it isn't just the result at the end of the day, but it's what's happening at the race shop. It's what's happening in our culture and our communication. You know, a lot of the same people are there, the talented people that we've always had, but we're actually using them as valuable resources now. I feel like we're using their knowledge. We're able to tap into that. The way we're functioning as a living, breathing organism as a race team, we're doing well together, and that's what's making the difference, you know. Nobody got smarter over the off season. We just figured out, and we're still figuring out, how to work better together, how to hold each other accountable without feeling like you're pointing the finger at everybody else and saying, hey, it's your fault that we're not running good. We're holding each other to a high standard, you know, and as I've said before, focusing on results, saying we need to be running top 10, doesn't get you a result. You focus on the small things that you do every week that equal that result. And I think we're doing a better job at that. So, as long as we continue to develop, as long as our engineers stay hungry and we don't get content with top 15 place finishes, because those become 20th later in the season, as long as we stay hungry and build on what we've already learned and stay to our goals, I think we're seeing our goals we're pretty good. We hit those goals and we're seeing results. So if we continue to hit those goals, our potential is going to stay where it's at or get better throughout the season, and that's what we're excited about.
We'll come over here to Lee.
Lee Spencer, Motorsport.com. When you got to Roush Fenway Racing, they were pretty much at the pinnacle. Being a person of faith as you are, how have you used that to deal with what's going on there? And I mean, it's like when things can't get any worse and your teammate takes you out accidentally. I mean, it's silly stuff like that. I mean, how do you dig deep and attempt to persevere?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think we're a results-based, I mean, that's what we do, right? We're all about results in racing, but for me, obviously, as you mentioned, like my contentment comes from my faith, and this is a job I have, so I want to do well at it, though. I feel like God's given me ability, given me opportunity, and then given me a work ethic, and I have to use all those the best that I can. But at the end of the day, I can't control everything, right? And if I can leave the racetrack and say, man, I prepared as hard as I could, I was as fit as I could be, I feel like I nailed every corner that I could nail, I did great on pit road, and I did all those things 100%, and we finished 20th, well, that's all I had that day, and I've got to be okay with that. But now the days when I make mistakes and crash my teammate or do things that, I didn't prepare all the way, or I fell out of the seat because I was tired, well, I needed to be doing more. And for me, I think that's what helps you on those tough days when all you have is a 20th place race car, but you know that you're doing everything that you can. You just got to be okay with that and keep pushing your teammates, pushing my crew chief, pushing my engineers to get more potential in the car. And that's what we're doing now. I'm still not fixated on what is the end of the day result. I'm not fixated on, is it 13th, is it 5th, is it a win? I'm fixated on doing my job the best that I can. And hopefully that equals wins and equals top fives. But my faith has definitely played a huge role in that, me being able to be content in that. But I'm not going to lie, it's been tough at times. When I first got to Roush, if you didn't qualify in the top 10, all their cars, I mean, it was a bad day. If you didn't run in the top 10, it was a bad day. And we kind of lost that for a little while. But I feel like last weekend at Texas, we're kind of back to that standard. I'm watching the pylon in qualifying, and Ricky and I are able to jump up, and we're mildly concerned with making the second round in qualifying. We feel like we should do that every weekend, whereas last year it was like, oh man, we made second round at times, and now the concern is third round. So you just keep firing away, you keep coming back hungry, and I know this is where God's put me, so I can't let results beat me down, I guess, at the end of the day, and just stay fired up, stay hungry for it.
We'll go to Bob and then Jeff and Chris.
Bob Pockris, ESPN. Does the fact that you have confidence in your cars help you on a weekend like this where who knows how much practice you're going to get?
Yeah, I mean, especially since it's Bristol where we've had success, as you and I talked this morning. Last year Ricky had a second place, I had a fifth place, so we know we have a decent starting package. The track hasn't changed, the cars haven't changed that much, as far as loads and setups are concerned. So no practice, I feel like we would still be pretty close. We have a good baseline to go off of. That gives you confidence. And as I said, I'm really kind of anxious to get on racetrack to see what kind of speed we have and see what our cars are like, because we have made so many gains at all the racetracks this year. And if last year we were a fifth place car, I'm wondering, are we going to be capable of winning a race here this weekend? I don't know the answer to that yet because I haven't been on track, but that is in the back of my mind right now, that man, if we've made the same gains here at Bristol that we've made everywhere else, then we could be a contender.
We'll go to Jeff and then to Chris.
At Texas, when you crashed the primary car, you were really down and disappointed and said it was like the best car you'd ever had. What happens immediately after that? Do you just go up to the team and say, hey, I'm sorry? Like, do you have to go out of your way to be like extra sorry? Like, what does a driver do in that situation?
Well, that's a fine line. For me, you've got to move on, but if you move on too quickly, it looks like you don't care that you just crashed the team's race car and their hard work. And if you beat yourself up all day, then you're no good to the team either. So I think what happened was, as soon as I crashed, I'm like, dang, man, I just crashed the fastest race car I've ever had. I'm in the infield care center because they force you to go, and I'm looking at the TV, and I see the backup rolling out of the trailer, and I'm like, this is terrible. You know, I just feel awful for my guys. But what's nice is that my team right now, the way that, like I said, the culture, communication, we are a team. So if my pit crew messes up one time on pit road, I'm not going off on them, you know what I mean? And when I crashed the primary car at Texas, when we're at the top of the board, they don't come in and say, you stink. Like, we have trust in each other, confidence, and we know that we're pushing that limit. I mean, we were top of the board partially because I was moving the groove out into turn one and finally took too big of a chunk. So they know I'm pushing 100%, and, you know, mistakes are going to happen, but I would say I'm pretty hard on myself for those mistakes. That's one of those things, like I was telling Lee, when I rate myself at the end of the day, it's based off of how did I execute, you know, not the end of the day result. And so that mistake is on that checklist I go through, and, you know, but I think you just, you're frustrated, you show it, then you come in, your team's like, all right, man, let's go. And you got to pick yourself up and move on. But what really helped me overcome that was the fact that my team got a backup car out of the hauler, got it on the racetrack in 25 minutes. I mean, that is impressive. For us to crash in a 50-minute practice, get 2 more runs on the racetrack, you know, I was laughing. One of the 11 guys, Denny's team, came over and he's like, man, if that happened to us, we'd be hoping we were on the track tomorrow. So the confidence that built for my team to know that we're doing the right things. I think it's maybe my second backup car in 3 years, so it's not like they were expecting to use it, but they were still prepared. And preparing for the unknowns is what's going to make you successful, and they're doing that well.
We're going to go to Chris and then to Dustin.
Chris Knight, catchfence.com. Hey, Trevor, I was just curious your thoughts on moving the Cup race from night to day in Charlotte in the fall.
I love Saturday races. It's an extra day at home, so I love night racing and Saturday races, but you know what? I'll be at the racetrack whatever day and whatever time they tell me to be. You know, I just, man, I'm a fan of Saturday night races all the time for the pure fact that we get that extra day, but other than that, the racing's fine. The fans, you know, if it draws a bigger crowd or better TV, then I'm all for it, and Marcus and the guys at SMI know what they're doing, so I fully trust that they're making good decisions, but I'm sure there's already been enough opinions about Saturday versus Sunday, and I'll just get my schedule when I get it and show up at the racetrack. To me, as far as the actual racing, you know, it doesn't, you know kind of, okay, if we race at night, my car needs to drive like this in practice. If we race during the day, my car needs to drive like this, and you make those adjustments. It's obviously less grip during the day. You slide around a little more. So I think, you know, the biggest thing that will happen is if it's a day race, you may see the top come in a little bit more. If it's a night race, the bottom is 100% going to be the way to go. So you think about that as you go into the weekend. You think about, do I need to work on the bottom, the top? Does my car need to be tight, loose at the end of practice? And you just go from there.
Can we go to Dustin?
Dustin Long, NBC Sports. You obviously got your first win with the Wood brothers. Elliott Sadler got his first win with the Wood brothers. Ryan Blaney seems like he could be on target to do that. As you kind of gain perspective, what does it mean to be a part of the fraternity of drivers that have won at the Wood brothers, and what's it like to see what they've done? Because you've seen the good and the struggles that they've gone through.
Well, you're right about gaining perspective. I think every race, every year, I appreciate what we did even more. You know, I see how tough it is and how I just kind of showed up as this 20-year-old kid and thought, oh man, this is how it's going to be. And then you realize how tough it can be at times. So I feel super blessed and fortunate to have had that and to have done it with the Wood brothers. I mean, that's a special family. And for the fact that they've stayed in the sport, stayed relevant in the sport and competitive, it's a huge testimony to who they are as people and what they've done as a family. I mean, they aren't a huge corporation, organization. You know, it's still very much run by Leonard, Eddie, and Lynn, and even Glenn. You know, he's still out going strong. So those guys are incredible people. Their whole family, their wives and kids and everybody that's involved, you know, they've managed to stay relevant in a sport that requires, you know, huge organizations to do that. So, you know, that's why drivers like myself have had opportunities to win in their cars. They always find a way, and with the help of Ford, to be in the right partnerships. You know, their partnership with Roush, and then now their partnership with Penske. They've got good equipment, and, you know, you're right, Ryan Blaney's been super fast this year. You know, as he continues to learn as a driver, as I continue to learn as a driver, they have the speed. They've just got to put together the full race, and whether it's pit road things or whatever it might be, you can't avoid wins when you're fast. They just happen, and I think that those guys are on the path to that for sure, and I'm happy for the Woods.
So what does it mean when you be a part of that fraternity of drivers that have won in that?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like the Daytona 500. I mean, there's just certain things that you get to experience as a person, and to be a part of that group that has helped the Wood Brothers to win in every decade, and to have that relationship with them. I mean, Eddie and Lynn still talk about it with me to this day, what that meant for them. And so, man, there aren't many things in life that you still talk about 6 years later and 7 years or 10 years later like we will be. And for us to have had that experience together, and to, like you said, it's a fraternity with a lot of guys who won in that race car. So, and not just guys that have won with the Wood Brothers, but won Cup races, I mean, obviously I hope to continue in my Cup career and go and win a lot of races, but to be in that group of drivers that have won Cup races and to have done it with the Wood Brothers is really special. Yes, sir.
Any final questions? In the middle?
Trevor, Adam Niemeyer with Fox TV in Cincinnati. A quick question for you. I know Michael and Annette mentioned something earlier. I've seen guys send out pictures on social media. How much do you guys like to go back and watch prior races and watch film to study, kind of like in other sports where guys watch film to prepare?
Yeah, preparation's a huge part of my week and weekend. It's something that as a young driver I kind of took for granted. I tried to do all this on natural ability, and you realize really fast when you get to this level that everybody's got natural ability and you got to work pretty hard at it. So I feel like this year is the most systematic I've been in that approach, with notes and with dartfish videos, which are the overlays from past races, and with watching full races. In my training I have a lot of time indoors in the gym or on a spin bike or on a treadmill, and I kind of have it playing, or I'll go through it. And today I went back and watched both races again quickly, skipping through to certain parts. But it's really important to do that, to know what you're going into. Just like earlier when I was talking about, it seemed like 15 laps you could run on the bottom and then you had to move to the top in the last race. Things like that you forget in 6 months or a year. When we go back to these racetracks, you would think we would remember everything, but I can't remember where I qualified or finished the last race. I kind of have to go online and look and see how I did. So, I really, it's important for me to go back through my notes, and it's important right after the race to take good notes. A lot of times you think, I'll remember that when I come back. And you don't write it down, and you get back and you don't remember it until about halfway through the race. And so for me, note-taking has been really important after the race. Some drivers probably laugh at all this stuff I'm saying, like, you don't need to do any of that. But I'm under the impression that if there's something out there that can give me an advantage at all, then I'm going to use that to the best that I can.
All right, Trevor, well, thanks for joining us this afternoon, and good luck this weekend.
Thank you guys for having me.
We're going to continue with our media availabilities for the 25th anniversary of the Food City 500 at Bristol Motor Speedway. We are joined by Kyle Busch, driver of the number 18 M&M's Toyota, who, along with his brother Kurt, leads all active drivers with 5 wins here at Bristol. Kyle, it looks like you have a special scheme on your helmet there. Why don't you start off by telling us about that today?
Well, it's in support of National Infertility Awareness Week, and in case many of you don't know that exists, it does. We're aware of it with the Kyle Busch Foundation and Samantha and myself, and being able to have a huge part of that this week, and having my sponsors with M&M's allowing me to have a special painted up helmet by Jason Beam and the guys that at Stilo to hook us up with a helmet to be able to give away after this race is over. So we're actually going to donate the helmet. It's going to be race worn. It's going to be a helmet that we're able to donate on our Kyle Busch Foundation eBay site. All those proceeds obviously will go to benefit the Kyle Busch Foundation and the Bundle of Joy Fund. So again, we appreciate M&M's allowing us this opportunity to do that. It's going to be hopefully a great race weekend for us that we can look forward to seeing this helmet on the checker flags there after the race is over.
All right, we'll open up to questions. We will start here with Lee and go over to Claire.
Kyle Lee, SpencerMotorsport.com. Can you just talk about how fatherhood has changed your life?
I think it changes anyone's life, but for myself in particular, it's been a lot of fun, and yet a lot of chaos sometimes, and good opportunities to being able to, I guess, realize how I kind of was when I was that age. So, Brexton's a whole lot of fun. He really enjoys a lot of what we do, actually. Going to the racetrack, he loves race cars. He always, wakes up in the morning, points at the TV, and either wants to watch Cars, or nowadays it's kind of Shrek or Nemo. So, he's learning his words and things like that. So it's unique to be able to be a part of that and understanding kind of what's going on in his brain a little bit. So it's certainly been an impact on my life, and as well as Samantha's life, but all for the good.
We'll go to Claire and then to Joe and Mark.
Claire B. Lang, Sirius XM NASCAR Radio. You and your brother both have 5 wins, and for supremacy here, even though it's been a while, you guys banter about that? I mean, nothing's better than watching the Busch brothers fight it out here at Bristol.
Yeah, no, I don't know that we've ever necessarily, gone on and talked about that. I do remember watching when I was a kid. I wasn't here yet, watching Kurt win his first race here at Bristol and having the epic battle with Jimmy Spencer there. So that was a lot of fun to watch and see how Kurt was able to get his first win here. And then, of course, the years that I've been able to put cars in victory lane, wishing I could go back and get a few more of those wins that maybe we missed out on. I'd have a heck of a lot more than just 5, but I think nothing comes close to the race that we had here in 2010 in the fall when I won the truck race, the Xfinity race, and the Cup race all in the same weekend. That was awfully special to be able to pull off the triple. And with as much things that can happen here and carnage that can happen here, it's certainly made for an awesome weekend and one for the record books.
And Kyle, how much do the changes on this track, with you being able to have figured it out, at one point, how much do the changes affect your knowledge or understanding or having to readapt? The team, I know, but what about the driver?
Yeah, every time you come here, it seems like there's something changing, and with the bottom grip strip, let's call it, it certainly makes it for a unique racetrack, more unique than what it was already. And, when they first reconcreted this racetrack and did a new layout to it, more of a bowl type where you can run all over the racetrack, I was a huge fan of that you could race cleanly and not have to knock people out of the way. And you can run 3 wide through the corners, 2 wide down the straightaways, mostly all the way around the racetrack. And that's boring, apparently. So, they changed it again and ground the outside groove, and that really threw me and my team for a loop. We just were never able to find something that we could work with up there and get it to work the way that we needed to win races here. And then, now that they've got the bottom groove kind of going back again, that seems to open it up again for the bottom and the top. You can run 2 lanes, and you can have the lanes be more equal to one another rather than the top just being so much faster and having to run up there. So, having options here is great for drivers. Having to follow each other single file line, that's not fun for drivers.
Joe Manzer, FoxSports.com. Don't you think that you and Kurt should get some kind of friendly bet going or something about who's going to get number 6 here?
Sure.
Work on that. Has it? You just answered some of this, but your last 5 or 6 races here, I know haven't gone the way you have wanted. Has a lot of that been bad luck, or has it been some of the things you just talked about with the changing conditions of the track?
Some of it's been changing conditions of the track, and then others of it has been just issues in general. We found we had an issue with our car last spring where we were blowing right front tires. That was self-inflicted. Not driver, but us as a team. What we did in practice and all that sort of stuff kind of alluded to it. So, and then last fall we had a really great car. Thing was fast, and we ended up breaking apart underneath the back, holding the rear end in the car. So, that was a part failure. So, a couple other runs that we've had here, we've been okay, like maybe 3rd, 4th or something, and I try a little bit more, and something happens in those. I can't remember that far back anymore, but, it's just been frustrating the last few times of coming here and not really having the speed in order to be able to run up in the lead and lead a lot of laps like I used to. When I used to win here each and every time, I'd win or lead 250, 350, 400 laps, something like that. We were a pretty dominant force, and that's kind of gone away. So looking to get those days back in the 18 camp.
We'll go to Mark and then Al and Reed.
Mark Garrow, PRN. How you doing? Kyle, we're coming up on Richmond. Last year, bump and run cost you the race on the last lap. It used to be that was it wasn't common, but it was sort of acceptable. And it seems like that's no longer acceptable, or how do you feel about it? And if the roles were reversed, would you take a shot at a bump and run to try to win a race on the last lap?
Well, it's not that it is or isn't acceptable. I think it's a matter of who it is, and the two cars that are the bumpy and the bumper. So it's just a matter of last year in that particular instance at Richmond, it was a teammate. So I didn't think that was necessarily the way teammates race each other, but after that it opened it up that's how it goes. So there's been certain things that have been said in some of our meetings where when it comes down to the end of the race, it's every man for himself. Well, I always thought you tried to race clean, race hard, and do the best you could to pass cleanly and not cause conflict or constraints within the people, within the organization, within the shop. You don't want guys back at the shop being on one side of the fence or the other. You don't want somebody wearing an 18 hat or wearing a 19 hat at work. You know what I mean? You want everybody to be a part of one single goal at Joe Gibbs Racing, and that's when you kind of start getting division going on. So as far as whether it's me and the 2 or the 22 or the 42 or the 48 or whoever it might be, those things are going to happen, and you're racing for a win. You got to go get it.
We'll go to Al, then Reed, and Chris.
Yeah, Kyle Al Pierce of Auto Week. At what point in 2015, when you came back, how many races did it take for you to feel comfortable? And the other half of that question is, have you seen Dale Jr. doing things now that convince you that he is comfortable again?
I was comfortable race 1. My first race was the All-Star race, but then my first points race was the 600, the longest one of the year, and I was okay with that. I got out of the car. It hurt to stand up right afterwards, but as far as, I guess, feeling like you were capable of winning again, probably 6, 7, 8 weeks, whatever it was. I think I won race 5, but nobody expected us to go to Sonoma and be able to score a win there, and I didn't either. We were running, I think, 6th, 7th, 8th, something like that for the majority of the race. So as far as Junior goes, I have no idea what he's feeling. Obviously, he got his first top 5. I think that was well noted last week, but I think that they've just had trouble finishing as an organization. I mean, you look at the 48 car, that was their second top 5 of the year or something like that. I mean, and he won, so obviously they've been lacking a little bit of speed here or there, and they just were able to get it last week 2 weeks ago at Texas and show us that they all have it when they need it. Does he look all right to me? He looks just fine. Yep. When he's in front of me, I just want to pass him.
Reed Spencer with NASCAR Wire Service. Do you think the VHT on the bottom will be enough to equate the 2 lanes, or do you think by the end of the race the top will still be the preferred lane?
I think you're going to see that the bottom lane does wear off a little bit as the weekend progresses and as the weekend goes along. It looks like they did a little bit more here this time than what they did last time, so we'll see how that transpires and what that means. But from what I'm watching already, there's a lot of bottom going on and not a whole lot of middle or top. So I'm sure Larson's thrilled, and he'll have to rubber in the top himself, and while the rest of us are I guess call it rooting and gouging for the bottom.
We'll go to Chris, and then Woody, Kelly, and Jenna.
ChrisKnightCatchfence.com. Kyle, I was just wondering if you were satisfied with the move of the Fall Charlotte race from nighttime to daytime on Sunday, and were you consulted about the opportunity to do that?
I was not consulted, but I don't need to be either. Not my call. So whether it's good or bad, I think it's fine. Certainly, I think it's kind of unique that it's this late in the not this late in the season, but like this late from the schedule being announced that they changed something about it, But I do agree with the assessment that sometimes the day race is a more exciting race or a better raceable race because the track kind of rubbers up and you're not just fighting for the bottom all the time and running around the bottom. So, hopefully it opens up and it's a good race. And I think that was the whole point of moving it to the daytime.
Go ahead, Woody.
Woody Kane with MRN. Kyle, you were talking about Richmond a little bit ago. Can you compare the obviously they're both short tracks, but the differences in how you have to attack Richmond versus here, and the differences between a day race and a night race there, since we have one of each now?
Yeah, there's really no comparison between racetracks, honestly, because Charlotte, Texas, Atlanta, they all look the same from overhead, but they all drive not even close to the same. So Richmond and this are more than oil and water, more than day and night, you know. So this place is an attack type racetrack, and yet when you attack, you can get yourself in trouble. And Richmond is a very methodical racetrack, and you got to be very you're on edge there all the time, and especially corner entry, getting into the corners, you're always loose there, but you got to be able to be loose there in order to carry the speed through the middle and have good drive off. So this place isn't quite like that. But with day versus night at Richmond, I think it's kind of the same play as any race. Sometimes nighttime just feeds itself with too much grip and makes it to where the bottom is the preferred lane no matter what. And daytime allows the racetracks to kind of widen out, be hotter. You're looking for a cooler racetrack. You're looking for where the rubber's not, because it's more grip where the rubber's not for at least a little while. Until the whole track rubber's in, then you got to go back to the bottom anyways. But it's just a matter of trying to put on the best show for the fans. I mean, they're the ones that pay their hard-earned money to come watch this race and put on a good show, and we want to make sure we do our best of that. And I think that's a lot of the consideration as to how many day races there are versus night races. But still, I think you got to have your fair share of night races for sure.
We'll go to Kelly.
Kelly Crandall, Racer.com. Kyle, I'm curious. Denny talks about Martinsville, and he says when he goes there, he gets a little bit of a different swagger about him. He's more confident there than other places, and winning's only acceptable. So you coming here with all your success across all three series, I was just curious if maybe this is that racetrack for you. Do you come here with a different kind of feeling and think to yourself the only thing acceptable here is winning, or no?
Yeah, no, I would certainly agree to that. I feel like it isn't just Bristol. There's a lot of racetracks that I would go to that I feel like there's nothing acceptable except winning, except due to certain circumstances that happen throughout a weekend or an event that take you out of that. But yeah, Bristol here, this is feel like one of my best wheelhouses. I really enjoy coming here. It's a lot of fun. I like it with the bottom being able to have an opportunity to race down there. I think that's what was my key point here when I was good, was that the bottom was the place where I wanted to be, and nobody else really did, and that always lended itself to a strength for us. Everybody wanted to run around the top because they thought it was better, and in reality it wasn't until the grind came. Then it was reality. So from there, just I like going to places like here, Richmond, Martinsville. Actually, I feel like is a place for us now that we can go to and win every time out. But there's also going to be the Kyle Larsons that come to Bristol, and nothing's going to be acceptable except winning for them too. So that's why the competition is so tough, because there's 5 guys, probably maybe even 7 guys, that walk in here this weekend thinking this is our weekend to get a win, and so you got to fight those guys in order to go out there and get that win for yourself.
And we're going to wrap up with Jenna over here on the left.
Jennifer, just first a follow-up to that. You said 5 to 7 guys could probably come here and win. Who do you consider those guys?
Larson, myself, the 22. Probably Chase Elliott. It's probably right off the top of my head.
Okay. JGR as a whole, like big picture, from where you guys were 2 months into the season last year and where you are now, do you think it's the same? Are you guys not as strong as you were out of the gates last year?
I mean, I would have to say, obviously, we're probably not as strong as we were last year right out of the gate, given that I think last year's win total was a lot more than this year. I feel as though we're competitive and we're close. We're right there. There's just some things that we see other teams doing that we haven't necessarily ventured off into yet. And some of those things, whether or not they're better for you or worse for you, it may depend on what the wind tunnel says or what your KNC numbers say and things like that. So we're working on all those things, though. It certainly didn't bode well for us last year to be as strong as we were in the beginning part of the season and the middle part of the season. We didn't win a championship because of how strong we were early on. You look at the 48 and those guys at Hendrick, they weren't very strong to start the season, and they picked up and they won the championship. So I don't think there's any reason to be cause for concern yet. Ask me that question again in about 10 weeks.
Kyle, thanks for joining us this afternoon, and good luck this weekend.
All right, thank you.